Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the team selection for Game Week 14. I've got 2 free transfers and a lot of different possibilities. I'll be discussing some key topics for the upcoming deadline, such as whether we should keep or sell Bowen. I've currently got him in my setup. I'm looking to buy some very key assets in the midfield this week, and it all depends on which midfielder I sell. That will be discussed extensively in this video. The Salah versus Haaland captaincy yet again is going to be a reoccurring topic in most game weeks this season, and I actually think Haaland against Tottenham could be a fantastic choice, as I'll discuss later on in this video. And there is so much more to discuss, such as what we should do with the Aston Villa assets like Matty Cash and Moussa Diaby. If you have enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe for new. If this video gets to over 200 likes, then there'll be a transcripts video tomorrow and also the deadline stream on Saturday, as well as the usual reaction stream on the Sunday, and much more content for Game Week 15 and beyond, and also for UCL Fantasy to wrap up the group stages. Matchday 6 content will also be headed your way in due course. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video and start off with the review of Game Week 13. Back in Game Week 8, when I wildcarded, I went with Areola and Turner as my 2 goalkeepers. They're both decent value, or at least Turner was, up until he lost a spot to Vlachodimos, which we discussed for many months now. That was always going to be a possibility, and now it's all down to Areola to keep clean sheets, and West Ham have only kept 1 this season in the Premier League. So I'm looking at this situation, and I think I need to improve upon this position. The goalkeeper position is the least important and relevant. You're not going to get too many points in general compared to the defenders, midfielders and forwards, but I can still make an upgrade here and go for a differential, whilst most people are going to settle with Areola. He's got some good fixtures. West Ham are 8th for expected goals conceded, but I still think I can do better, and I'll be discussing a possible goalkeeper transfer this week since I have 2 free transfers to use, and I think it could really benefit me to upgrade this position, go for a differential, and go for someone who can get many clean sheets. On paper, you would look at Crystal Palace as having one of the best chances of a clean sheet in Game Week 13 against Luton Town away. It wasn't the case, and Luton Town ended up winning the match, and they scored a late goal there to win it. Anderson only with 1 point. He's been fairly disappointing since I bought him in. I think in the first week I bought him, it was a 0-0 draw between Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace, and both Turner and Anderson got me clean sheets, one of the highlights of my season by that stage of the season. But since then, Anderson hasn't really been that good for me. I've mainly benched him, and now when I start him, only a 1 point against Luton Town. It is what it is, but I still think it could be worth holding on to Anderson and any Crystal Palace defender until Game Week 15 when they face Bournemouth at home. After that, though, the fixtures are really tough. They face the likes of Manchester City, and that's where you could look to sell the likes of Joachim Anderson. I think it's going to be very simple by that stage. But in the meantime, he could be a hold against West Ham, possibly bench him there, and then start him against Bournemouth in Game Week 15. But things look really good here with Lascelles scoring against Chelsea. It was really close between him and Matty Cash for that spot in my team. I went for Lascelles because I backed Newcastle more for the clean sheet. They didn't keep 1, but Lascelles scored to put Newcastle 2-1 ahead, and that was also assisted by Anthony Gordon, who I'll get onto very soon as well. But I'm very happy with Lascelles, and the same goes for William Saliba. Ever since I bought him in UCL Fantasy, he has been terrific for me with 8 and 7 points respectively, and in FPL he has also been just so consistent. He got me a 9 points against Burnley with that goal, and also a clean sheet against Brentford as Arsenal won the game late on, and Saliba is solid as ever. Very good for bonus points. You might not have gotten any in Game Week 13, but that's completely fine. I think Saliba is arguably the best defender in FPL up until Christmas. The midfield and forward line was amazing for me, with the exception of Diaby, who was sobbed up at half-time against Tottenham Hotspur. Unai Emery sometimes makes these early changes. He did it at Arsenal. He's done it everywhere he's been, and he can change the game with these proactive substitutions. Diaby wasn't having an impact in that game, and Leon Bailey looked really impressive when he came on, and it wouldn't surprise me if Bailey took Diaby's spot against Bournemouth away in Game Week 14. So Diaby was disappointing, but Anthony Gordon was the game changer. He got a 13-pointer, a goal, an assist, which was for Lascelles, and 3 bonus points, and obviously the red card did also help him. He scored the goal when Chelsea were down to 10 men, but Anthony Gordon is always decent in these big games. He scored against Arsenal, he scored now against Chelsea, and it's Man United next, so I actually don't mind him in those sort of matches, especially at home. And Anthony Gordon has been a revelation, because I think when we saw him at Everton, we thought he was alright, but you never really saw why he's going, for that much money, why he's linked to so many clubs. But at Newcastle this season. He has been a surprise package and arguably Newcastle's best attacker in this Premier League campaign. The other midfielder was Salah. He was pretty underwhelming against Manchester City. He didn't even have a shot on target, but he got that assist for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Salah has an amazing record against Manchester City and in the Premier League in general. So Salah is the best FPL option for a reason, alongside Erling Haaland, and that's why the big debate for Game Week 14 will be the captaincy between those two FPL legends. The final midfielder in my team is Saka, who was pretty underwhelming as well against Brentford, but he did create 5 chances in that game, and that final cross for Kai Havertz won Arsenal the game. Saka got the assist, 2 bonus points, and he carried that form over yet again to the Champions League, where he's got the most goal contributions of any player in that competition with 7 goal contributions. So Saka's been amazing in the Champions League, especially in home matches. Hopefully Arsenal can translate some of that attacking fluidity from the Champions League to the Premier League, but it also has to do with how teams set up against Arsenal. In the Champions League, teams are more expressive, more open, they're not parking the bus. In the Premier League though, teams are very, very deep, like Brentford were last week, so that also plays a part into why Arsenal aren't clicking fully in the attack in the Premier League. But Saka is still so consistent, I'd thoroughly recommend him, and apart from Salah, I would argue that Saka is the best midfielder in the game right now. With Jarrod Bowen missing out, I had Cameron Archer come in, and I didn't really expect much from him anyway, but thankfully my other bench players didn't do anything. Matty Cash got a 0-pointer, got booked, was lucky not to be sent off, and he was subbed off at half-time, and my other bench player, Tsimikas, got a 2-pointer against Manchester City. So Cameron Archer got 2 points. It's something, I'll take it. I never really expect anything from him. He's just there to make up the numbers and to be a facilitator as a 4.6 million forward, which I bought in at 4.5 million. Now, my other 2 forwards delivered. Erling Haaland with the goal, a 7-pointer. A bonus point there, all things considered, pretty decent stuff for Haaland, and those that went for Haaland over Salah definitely gained something. And of course, apart from the odd hauls, the major hauls by the likes of Gordon, most of us went for Haaland, Salah or Saka, and not much separated the 3 in the end, and they're 3 of the best FPL options in the game, with Haaland and Salah obviously being the top 2 options. My final forward was Ollie Watkins. It's a bit frustrating because he got that booking, and that actually prevented him from getting bonus points. He was on course for a 7-pointer at the very least, but that booking eliminated him from the bonus points, and in the end it was just 5 there for Ollie Watkins. But another return, he's never blanked at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and he's got Bournemouth away next, then it's Manchester City and Arsenal back to back, but they are home matches, and Aston Villa have the best home record so far this season, joint top with Liverpool, but Aston Villa have scored even more goals, and their goal difference in general at Villa Park is absolutely sensational. So I still would recommend keeping Ollie Watkins, and if you are looking to sell Aston Villa assets, I think Moussa Diaby is the most expendable one. Then it'd probably be Matty Cash, but if you're happy with the rest of your defence, you could make a case for keeping Cash. He could be very crucial in a game week like 18, which is going to be a blank for Brentford and Manchester City, and I think he could keep a clean sheet there against Sheffield United. But more on that later on, because I do have Matty Cash myself. I benched him this week. Let's talk about how I did in terms of my overall points, the captaincy, before moving on to the Game Week 14 team selection. In the end, it was even more progress, 65 points, and I also got another green arrow to 658,000 from around 1.2 million. So massive progress yet again, and it's been an upward trajectory since the Game Week 8 wildcard, it has to be said. Only 1 red arrow in that time frame, if I'm not mistaken, and ultimately Gordon and Lascelles were the big game changers for me, and of course Saliba and Saka have also been very consistent for me since I brought them in. So very happy. I also captained Haaland, not too bad, not the best captain, but also he got a return and you can't complain too much. So I'm now close to 800 points. I should reach it very soon in the early stages of Game Week 14, and I'm actually very happy with how my team is set up. The algorithms of Drafthound and fpl.team do favour my squad this week. There's a lot to discuss. I've got 2 free transfers. I would argue I'm in a position of strength, even though the overall rank isn't great. So let's now head over to the Game Week 14 team selection and start off with a possible change in goal. The thumbnail of this video almost certainly gave it away, but I'm looking to buy David Raya for Turner and have Areola on the bench. And Arsenal face Wolves at home. I already have Saliba in my squad, but I don't mind doubling up on the Gunners defensively in certain matches. Arsenal have the best defensive numbers in the Premier League, with the least goals conceded, the least expected goals conceded as well, and one of the best defences throughout Europe. So I'm very happy with that Gunners defence, and that's why I'm looking to buy David Raya, who is at 4.9 million. He isn't making too many saves because Arsenal aren't conceding many shots. the fewest of any team in the Premier League, even less than Manchester City, for example. And I think those two are the best defences overall, even though Liverpool have conceded fewer goals than Manchester City. But I think David Raya is a very sensible and safe option over this Christmas period. There's always this discussion about Aaron Ramsdale. I just don't think he's going to come back into this Arsenal team. And he only played in Game Week 13 because David Raya was ineligible to play against Brentford. So I think David Raya is definitely a safe option in goal. And it has to be said, in recent games, he's been very solid for the Gunners. He contributes to the distribution and retaining the ball. And I also think he offers more composure and calmness to the Arsenal defence compared to Ramsdale, who is an Arsenal fan's favourite. He's very popular in the dressing room and he might still stay at Arsenal in the long term. But with all this scrutiny by the media, I think it's been massively overblown. But you might see a situation where one of them has to leave. Most likely it will be Ramsdale and Raya will be the undisputed number one with no sort of pressure happening from the outside. But I think David Raya is a very solid FPL option. I'm looking to buy him this week and it has been the case for several weeks now. This defender has been absolutely awful in recent weeks, but Matty Cash could be a viable asset in game weeks like 14 and 18. In the game weeks in between, especially against Manchester City and Arsenal, I'd be looking to bench Matty Cash, but I might hold on to him because I've got other fires to put out and other upgrades to make where maybe some people are looking at their goalkeeper and just starting Areola. I might just go for Raya in this instance and start Cash when he's facing Bournemouth and going for that attacking upside. But you have to say the Cherries have been impressive recently and I'm not so sure if Aston Villa will keep a clean sheet. So this is something I may reconsider. Matty Cash could drop down to the bench or I could even go on to sell him and instead of buying Raya, I'd start Areola and buy Zinchenko instead for Matty Cash, especially with Ben White just come back from injury, and it could be a case of Tomiyasu and Zinchenko being the starting fullbacks for Arsenal at this moment in time. Now, my second defender is going to be Tsimikas at home to Fulham. The only downside to this is that Alisson is out for the next couple of weeks. He could be available for the Man United game, but for these easier matches where you're expecting Liverpool to keep some clean sheets, their chances of keeping those clean sheets could be reduced as a result of Kelleher being between the sticks instead. But Tsimikas in home matches, you probably want to start him in most game weeks unless he's facing an Arsenal or a Manchester City. Now, my final defender is a very simple one, William Saliba, and doubling up on that Arsenal defence. That would be my aim, no matter if I go for Raya or Zinchenko. Let me know who you prefer, by the way, down in the comment section below. But for me, the best way of covering the Arsenal defence is Saliba, and by some distance, he's the most nailed on. He also is pretty decent for bonus points, and he can get the odd goal or assist. I think Saliba's been absolutely terrific, a fan favourite of mine in terms of FPL signings. He's been terrific for me in all fantasy formats, and I'd thoroughly recommend him to anyone watching. My second signing is the most locked-in transfer I've probably seen all season, and that's Bryan Mbeumo. From Game Week 14 to 21, Brentford's fixtures are fantastic, and the only downside to Mbeumo is the blank in Game Week 18, and also because he's going to the African Cup of Nations in January in Game Week 21. But just before that, from Game Week 14 onwards, I think Mbeumo is one of the best midfielders and FPL assets in the game. He has gone up to 7 million. His underlying numbers are absolutely insane. His XGI is over 10, and I would back him in fixtures like this against Luton Town at home, and even in the tougher games. You know, he's got a good record against Liverpool, for example. I think Mbeumo could be absolutely fantastic no matter who he's up against. Playing down the middle alongside Wissa for Brentford, I think Mbeumo is an amazing option in Ivan Toney's absence. So Mbeumo for me is locked in, and it's just a matter of whether I go for Raya, Zinchenko, or another transfer entirely. If you've got any recommendations, let me know down in the comment section below. But let's now talk about the other midfielders, including Jarrod Bowen, who is still at 50% chance of playing at the time of this recording, but I would expect him to be available against Crystal Palace at home. And to be honest, I'm seeing so many people looking to sell him, and I just ask myself why. I think he's going to be available this weekend. If that's the case, I just don't really see the upside to selling Bowen when he's still got some good fixtures. And you might look at fixtures like Tottenham away. That's still a good game for him, in my opinion, because the way Tottenham are defending with all their injuries and suspensions, I honestly think Bowen could rip them apart, and West Ham could get some goals on the counter-attack and in transitional play. So Jarrod Bowen for me is one of the best midfielders in FPL up until Christmas and the New Year, and if he's available in Game Week 14, don't make the mistake of selling him, in my opinion. Now let's talk about the other midfielders, including Salah. A no-brainer, a captaincy option, facing Fulham at home. I think Salah is first or second in the captaincy rankings, and it's just about him or Haaland to put the armband on. They're so reliable and consistent, and Salah's ceiling is through the roof, especially in home matches. His record at Anfield speaks for itself. So let's now talk about the other two midfielders. Anthony Gordon at home to Man United. The fixture is the toughest on paper from any single one of my midfielders, but I think Gordon can do well here. He's done pretty well in previous home matches against big clubs, and I think he can do the same against Manchester United, who look awful defensively. Onana had a howler against Galatasaray. If he does that again against Newcastle, we could be looking at 5 or 6. I don't think it will be the case, but it's worth mentioning Man United can't defend the way they did against Galatasaray or have a performance like Onana between the sticks. My final midfielder is going to be Bukayo Saka, one of the best wingers in world football right now. He has an amazing record in the Champions League so far. He's doing well in the Premier League despite not really looking that threatening from open play and not scoring enough goals recently, but he's still getting the assists, the bonus points, and his consistency is absolutely amazing, especially for a player at his age. Wolves at home might not be the easiest game for Arsenal from an offensive perspective. You would back them more defensively in that game, and Arsenal might only score 1 or 2 goals, which I talked about in the previous game week against Brentford. I thought that'd be a very tight game and Arsenal would win by 1 goal, and that's what ended up being the case. I think Arsenal struggled a bit more than I expected, but Wolves will probably employ a very similar formation and setup, sitting back very deep and not giving Arsenal any spaces in transition. If they do, you could see a 6-0 or something like they did against Lens. Maybe that's a bit too far, but I think if you attack Arsenal like PSV, Lens, and a few other teams have done this season, you're going to be punished, and that's why most teams will sit back, and it might be frustrating owning the likes of Saka or any Arsenal attacker. It will be the same old front two. Ollie Watkins away to Bournemouth. That's a decent fixture. I'm not a big fan of Aston Villa on their travels, despite their win against Tottenham, and they also beat Chelsea earlier in the season at Stamford Bridge. But I would not be surprised if Bournemouth got a result in this game, including a victory. But Watkins can still score in one of these matches away from home. But I think the main appeal with Aston Villa assets are in home matches because they are imperious and so difficult to beat at Villa Park. Let's see if the unbeaten record changes when they face Manchester City or Arsenal. But Ollie Watkins for me will be a mainstay over the Christmas period in my opinion. As much as Isak is very tempting, I think he's a great option and arguably the second best forward in the game behind Haaland up until the new year. Whilst Callum Wilson is out, you've also got Darwin Núñez and Alvarez. They are other good options. But for me, Ollie Watkins is so consistent. He's got 7 goals, 8 FPL assists, and his underlying numbers are terrific. He's playing in one of the very best teams in the country right now. So there's so many reasons why you should stick with Ollie Watkins in my opinion. And I think the only forward I'd sell him to, apart from Haaland, would be Isak. But even then, I wouldn't be in a rush to sell him. And even then, I think he could outscore Isak over this festive period. So I think Ollie Watkins is definitely worth holding on to. The final forward is Erling Haaland facing Tottenham at home. Difficult fixture on paper. Tottenham have gotten the better of Manchester City over the years, but mainly in home matches. At the Etihad, Manchester City have a great chance of winning, and I think the way they play under Ange Postecoglou would suit Pep Guardiola and Manchester City more. So even though they're in a better position long term, they're playing better football, I think in matches against Manchester City, they could be in for an absolute demolition, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happened this week in Game Week 14. 5, 6, 7-0. I mean, let's wait and see. Spurs are still a decent team, but they've got some key players out. And if they play with that high line against Manchester City, that could be absolute murder, to say the least. And that's why Haaland is a top consideration for the captaincy. Are you going for Salah or Haaland in terms of the armband? Let me know down in the comment section below. I'm now going to reveal what I'm going to do in terms of the captaincy and also my bench order and also all the other details we need to discuss with this Game Week 14 team selection. With these provisional transfers, it would be Areola as my backup goalkeeper, Lascelles first on the bench, Archer second, and Joachim Andersen third, facing West Ham away. And I think that's pretty simple. Maybe I could start Lascelles yet again over Matty Cash. Ironically, I think Newcastle might have a better chance of a clean sheet compared to Aston Villa this week. Maybe you disagree, and that's completely fine. Bowen, let's see if we get any more updates about him, but things are looking positive. And the latest we saw a few days ago from the Telegraph is that Bowen will be rested in the Europa League on Thursday, which will happen just a few hours after this video is published. And then after that, he should be available for the Crystal Palace game in Game Week 14. If that's the case, I'm very happy to just keep him. I think he's the best West Ham asset, period, and one of the best midfielders in FPL. So now, about the captaincy, I'm currently going for Salah, and Haaland is my vice. It's a very difficult decision. I think the Tottenham injuries could sway me towards Haaland, but at the moment I'm going for Salah. Fulham is still a so-called easier team compared to Tottenham, and I also think Salah has been a bit more consistent this season. He's got the midfielder advantage, and that's why the armband is on him. But honestly, it could switch to Haaland. I'll discuss this in the deadline stream as well. It's almost a 50-50 call in my opinion. If Tottenham had their key players available, like Romero, who is still suspended by the way, if they had James Maddison and all these other amazing players so far this season like Mickey van der Ven, then I would definitely just go for Salah and Haaland will be my vice captain, and I wouldn't have any conundrums in terms of the captaincy. But because those players are unavailable and with form in mind, I think Haaland has to be considered at the very least. Let me now head over to the likes of Drafthound and fpl.team. I'm going to talk about some of the suggested transfers by the algorithm, talk about Drafthound and some of the key assets you will get from that website. There is a link in the description below. And with fpl.team, I'll show you a sneak preview of my squad in Game Week 15. I've discussed Drafthound all season, ever since the summer basically, and they are recommending to sell Bowen to Mbuma, which a lot of you are doing as well, and also Areola to Kelleher, which is also a pretty solid shout actually. It's a short-term punt. I think once Alisson comes back in a couple of weeks' time, then that would be made redundant, and honestly, in my case, I would just rather sell Turner instead of Areola. I don't think that would make sense in my situation, but I think Bowen is worth keeping. I think he's going to be available, and as a result, I am more inclined to sell Diaby. I know some of you might be thinking, he's facing Bournemouth away, he's playing down the middle, you can't sell Diaby ahead of that game. That's completely fair enough, but I'm actually not too sure if he's going to start the game, and if he does, is he going to play 70 plus minutes? There have been many occasions this season where Diaby's only played 60 minutes or less, and you look at that half-time substitution against Tottenham, that doesn't bode too well for Diaby, at least for the next couple of weeks, in my opinion. And I'd rather have consistent 90-minute starters like Bowen, Salah, Saka, and at this moment in time, Gordon in my FPL team in the long run, in Mbeumo as well, and that's what I'm looking to bring in. That is a set-on transfer in Mbeumo. I'm not going to reconsider that, and then it's just down to my second move, of course, like I talked about earlier, Raya, Zinchenko, or someone else entirely. I might just go for that double up in Arsenal defence. I think it's fantastic either way, and it's also very standard stuff. So if you look at Drafthound right now, if you click on this green icon, it's the optimization tool. It will sort out the captaincy, the bench order, and it goes for Areola in goal. This is without transfers being made, by the way. Salah's the captain, but he's got the exact same expected points figure in Game Week 14 compared to Haaland. They've also gone for a back four here of Lascelles, Cash, Tsimikas, and Saliba, and the bench is Archer, Bowen, and Anderson. But once Bowen's flag has changed, maybe to yellow, or he's completely cleared to play, he would then be put into the starting 11, and Drafthound updates their algorithm daily, so they will update as soon as we get any concrete news about Jarrod Bowen or any other player in FPL. And of course, as I've always talked about, there is the player rankings tool. You have so many metrics at your disposal, such as chance of scoring, assisting, of scoring a brace, a hat-trick, getting a yellow card, predicted points for the next game week or for the next 3 matches overall, expected minutes. You've also got the fixture analysis tool where you can sort it out by defensive or attacking numbers. You've got player comparisons and predicted lineups. All of that is on the Drafthound website. If you sign up to be a pro pay tier member, there is still a exclusive offer going on right now, and you can get insane value for money and have this website at your disposal until the end of the season for a bargain price. So be sure to check out the link in the description below. Using my one, you can also gain access to all these amazing tools by Drafthound. But let's now head over to fpl.team, a free resource, and I'll talk about Game Week 15. Things change so quickly in football and thus FPL, but as things stand, I could go for David Raya in goal and a back three of Tsimikas, Saliba and Joachim Andersen, all with pretty decent fixtures and a good chance of a clean sheet. A midfield five of Salah, Mbeumo, Saka, Gordon and Bowen, and a front two of Watkins and Erling Haaland. The bench would be Areola, Lascelles, Archer and Cash. And that's another reason why I'm looking to buy David Raya this week, because I could also bench Areola in Game Week 15 when he faces Tottenham. Despite Tottenham's woes and their injuries, I still think their attack is looking pretty good and they're going to score plenty of goals over the next few weeks up until Van der Ven, Romero and everyone else is back, such as James Maddison, and that will mainly be in January. Romero will be back by Game Week 15, of course, but I'd be very happy. In terms of initial captaincy thoughts, it would be Salah there, with Haaland being the vice, but to be honest, I haven't even fully decided on the Game Week 14 captaincy, which is even more important at this moment in time. In terms of expected points, by the way, it's 68.5 in Game Week 15, and in Game Week 14, it's 75.1. I think that's the highest I've ever seen it at any stage so far this season. I'd be very happy if I could get 90 to 100 points this week, but that might be pushing it a little bit too much. But I haven't got 100 points so far this season in any fantasy format. I have been close in UCL Fantasy. I've been pretty solid in FPL in terms of recent weeks, and maybe that 100 plus point haul could be the game changer and put me in a very solid position up until the end of the season. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 22,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Drafthound, which I discussed just a few minutes ago. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 14 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.